Hello everyone. Welcome back to our English lesson. I'm Emma, your British English teacher.
And I'm Jake, your American English conversation partner. Today, we're diving into the world of law and ethics.
That's right. We'll focus on legal language and how to discuss ethical issues.
Exactly. We're going to cover some important vocabulary that you can use in discussions about legal matters.
Let's start with some key terms. First up is liability. Jake, can you give a brief introduction to it?
Sure. Liability refers to being responsible for something, especially in a legal sense.
Great explanation. For example, if someone slips and falls in a store, the store may have liability for their injuries.
Right. And precedent is another important term. It refers to a previous case or decision that influences future cases.
That's a perfect example. If a court rules on a case involving liability, that ruling could set a precedent for similar cases.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about statute. A statute is a written law passed by a legislative body.
Yes, statutes can vary by jurisdiction, meaning different areas may have different laws.
And jurisdiction refers to the official power to make legal decisions and judgments.
Perfect. And our last term is due process, which means fair treatment through the normal judicial system.
Due process is essential in ensuring that all legal rights are respected.
Now, let's move on to our first dialogue. Ready, Jake?
Absolutely. Let's start discussing a recent case.
Great idea. I read about a case where a company faced liability for a defective product.
Interesting. Was there a precedent set in similar cases?
Yes, indeed. The courts referred to a prior case involving a similar situation.
So, the lawyers likely argued based on that precedent?
Exactly. It's often easier to win a case when a strong precedent exists.
Did the company have a strong defense?
They claimed that the product complied with all relevant statutes at the time.
That's interesting. So, even if something goes wrong, they might avoid liability?
That's the general idea. However, it depends on due process and how the court interprets the law.
Right. So, they still have to prove their case in court, even with statutes backing them?
Precisely. Every case must go through due process to ensure fairness for both parties.
I see. What if a case is tried in the wrong jurisdiction?
That can lead to issues. Cases may get dismissed, or the wrong laws might be applied.
That must complicate matters significantly.
Absolutely. It stresses the importance of knowing the jurisdiction.
So, what can be done if someone feels their due process rights are violated?
They can appeal the decision in a higher court, which can examine if due process was observed.
That's a valuable insight. Thanks for sharing, Emma.
You're welcome, Jake. Now, let's move to the explanation section.
Alright, so, we've covered liability, precedent, statute, jurisdiction, and due process.
Yes, and let's look at more examples of how these terms can be used.
For instance, a company might face liability for environmental damage.
Exactly. And if there's a precedent, it can help determine the outcome.
Another example might be a new statute concerning data protection.
That's very relevant today. If a violation occurs, jurisdiction is important in addressing it.
And if someone believes their rights are violated, they should seek due process in court.
Well said, Jake. Now, let's explore the vocabulary section where we can delve deeper into these terms.
Let's start with liability. Here are some sentences.
Liability can arise from a breach of duty.
A good example is, the company was found liable for the injuries caused by its product.
Exactly. And another sentence could be, they had to pay substantial damages due to their liability.
Finally, the insurer refused to cover the liability incurred by the incident.
Now, let's move on to precedent. Here's a sentence.
That case set a new precedent for future civil rights cases.
And another could be, judges often rely on precedent when making their decisions.
The lawyer cited a precedent that favored her client's position.
Next, let's look at statute. Here's a sentence. The new statute increased penalties for fraud.
A statute may take years to pass through the legislative process.
Violators of that statute can face heavy fines or imprisonment.
And now for jurisdiction. Here's an example. The court has jurisdiction over all criminal cases.
Some jurisdictions have special courts for family law matters.
It's crucial to determine jurisdiction before filing a lawsuit.
Finally, let's explore due process. One example is, the right to due process is guaranteed by the Constitution.
Failure to provide due process can lead to the dismissal of a case.
Every citizen deserves due process, regardless of the charge.
Those examples were very clear, Emma. Now, shall we review what we've learned?
Absolutely. Let's go through a few questions.
What does liability refer to?
Liability refers to being responsible for something in a legal context, like a company's actions.
Can you explain what precedent means?
Precedent refers to previous court decisions that influence future cases.
What is a statute?
A statute is a law that is formally written and enacted by a legislative body.
How is jurisdiction defined?
Jurisdiction is the authority given to courts to hear cases and make legal decisions.
Lastly, what do we mean by due process?
Due process ensures fair treatment through the normal judicial system, protecting legal rights.
Great job. I think we've really covered a lot today.
Yes, we have. Remember, understanding legal terminology is essential for discussions about law and ethics.
For our next lesson, we'll delve into ethical dilemmas and how to discuss them.
I look forward to that. Thanks for joining us today.
See you next time.